Every single day, millions and millions of people are typing into ChatGPT, hey, write me some sales copy, write me a landing page, write me a social media post. And to be honest with you, it sucks. How many times have you gone onto someone's landing page and just said, mate, this was written by ChatGPT or this was written by AI, and immediately you start to get the ick and you go, bro, I don't even want to read this anymore. But there is something that you can do. Exactly what I'm going to show you in this video is how to leverage the dark arts of psychology to ultimately create incredible copywriting that is literally written by the best copywriter in existence, all right, using AI. So we've created a beautiful system prompt that you can use to ensure whatever LLM platform you're using creates copy that is literally written from the gods. And I've seen a lot of copy. This is what we use for our agency clients. This is what we use for ourselves. And this is going to transform the way you use AI to ultimately help you write persuasive copy. As you can see here, we have the exact same prompt in the exact same model, creating two completely different outputs. Now, one is the base model that the majority of the market are using. The second one is loaded with our system prompt that I'm going to show you in a second, that is loaded with the dark arts of persuasion. That takes the best of authors like Robert Cialdini, the author of Influence, the psychology of persuasion. By showing you the dark psychology that is used by social engineers and persuaders to ultimately get people to do things that they didn't even know that they wanted to do. And so when it comes to marketing, this is incredibly important to understand, because you are either having these forces used against you or you're using them for good. All right, and my intention for this video is to give you the actual skill set and the system prompt that you can then take amazing sales copy for your sales pages, your emails, your content, whatever it is. So you'll be able to spin up high quality, persuasive copy based on the dark psychology of marketing. All right, so what we're going to be covering are 5 triggers that most marketers literally don't know exist. And so, this is literally what the majority of people are doing today. It's like, no thanks, I don't want to use my brain, I just want to use AI, okay? So, while AI is making copywriting incredibly accessible for everyone, it's also making people a lot stupider. Because AI at the moment defaults to the mean, and every AI sales page sounds the same. And it's grammatically perfect and it's emotionally dead. If you don't know the psychology behind what's happening, then you literally can't beat average. Now, the first thing that you need to understand when it comes to copywriting is that every single line of copy equals a link in a chain. Job of your sales copy is to get the reader onto the next line and the next line and the next line, right? So for example, if they read your headline, they need to be encouraged to go to the next line, which is the sub-headline, and then into the body, and then into the next place. And the best sales copy ever is the ones that actually compel the reader to read through the entire thing. And just think about that as a dying art today. So the first trigger we're going to be talking about is hijacking the primal brain. Now, a lot of people think, humans have come a long way, and yes, they have. But at the same time, the brain still has the same concerns that it did when we were living out in the Serengeti and hunting animals, all right? And so a fantastic book on this is actually The Experience Machine by Andy Clark, where he talks about the fact that our brains are actually prediction machines. The brain is optimized to help you survive, right? That is the purpose of the brain. So it doesn't want to waste energy. It doesn't want to do things that are uncomfortable. And that's why pushing yourself into new experiences is a very uncomfortable experience in itself, because the brain wants to be sure about what it's doing. And so if it can't predict the next move, then it goes into overdrive. Okay, so the brain has 3 major concerns. The first one is safety and survival. This is why if we walk up to the edge of a ledge of a really high building, your brain says, nope, I don't want to do that, right? It's trying to keep you safe. It's trying to make you survive. The second one is to get out of pain, fear, or discomfort. All right. So if you're doing like a long run, for example, your first ever 10K, when you get to a point where things start to get quite painful, the brain says, nope, this hurts, right? And then most people at that point kind of stop. But then people who are disciplined, they can obviously override the brain and then get the benefits of training from that result. But again, remember that the majority of people want to get out of pain, fear, or discomfort as quickly as possible. The third priority and the concern of the brain is ultimately to conserve energy. Okay, if someone is going onto your page and there's like a million different things on there, there's loads of links, there's loads of this, too many options, complete overwhelm, the brain just shuts off, all right? It's working way too hard. So the best copy out there is copy that ultimately speaks to these three major concerns and understands them. Safety and survival, get out of pain or fear or discomfort, or conserve energy. So what I'm going to show you right now is just an example of generic copy. And, again, I've worked with so many different health coaches before, and a lot of them are incredibly multi-skilled, multi-dimensional. They have beautiful holistic offers. They can help people in so many different ways. And they typically, try and intellectualize. They try and make their copy sound really clever, but it actually has the adverse effect. And you'd be surprised how many people write copy like that. Okay, but I'm just looking at that thinking, what the are you talking about? Like, what does this actually mean? And so a better rewrite of this would be something along the lines of this. All right, so warning, don't even think about hiring another project manager until you've read this. Your team is bleeding 11 hours every single week to miss deadlines, scattered Slack threads, and tasks that fall through the cracks. All right, so the headline, the big warning sign, ultimately grabs the attention through the concerns of the brain, which are safety and survival. Right, when you see a warning sign, immediately that triggers that part of the brain which just wants to survive. Right, if the brain sees danger coming up, it's going to immediately put all of its attention into what's happening. And that's why your headline copy has to grab that attention through the novelty, through talking to the actual pain and that desire of the brain for certainty, survival, and safety. All right, my interest is piqued. Okay, so that's the first link of the chain. Your team is bleeding 11 hours every single week to miss deadlines. And that, obviously this is hyper-targeted content, copy, which is great. Scattered Slack threads and tasks that fall through the cracks. And so anyone who's struggling with any of those issues is immediately going, yep, that's me. I need to find out what ultimately happens next. And that is the next link of the chain where we go into the subheadline. And the job of the subheadline is to prove the headline. We're telling them that we understand their problem deeply. And we're also speaking to things like loss aversion and the fear of loss, right? Which is what we'll be talking about in one of the triggers later on. Okay, so you can just see this is far more emotionally charged. Every single line immediately leads on to the next one, and I know what I'm getting myself into. All right, so I'm not going to waste time. Remember that the third concern of the brain is it doesn't want to waste time. All right, so this is a great example compared to what most people are doing, which is just intellectualizing, and it's just vague and it's not really explaining anything. This kind of gets to the point as quickly as possible. All right, so that's just a little example. Now, trigger 2, all right, is what we call the 3 stranger questions. So I love this as an example, and I got this from this fantastic book called Social Engineering, The Science of Human Hacking. What this guy does is he has a company where big businesses ultimately hire him to find gaps in the security of their companies, right? So he'll be hired to ultimately go to some of these offices and spaces or websites and try and hack into their systems by persuading people that he's someone that they can ultimately trust. And in one of the chapters talks about how anytime he would go up to a stranger and he would have to try and either bypass their security or speak to someone at reception to let him into the upper floors of the building to test its security, he said that the stranger has 3 main questions that are on the top of their mind. Who are you? What the heck do you want? And how long is this interaction going to take? And so if these questions remain unanswered, immediately there's a threat response that's ultimately been triggered. And so, for example, if that's on a website button, immediately they're going to exit out. Okay. So those 3 questions are things that we need to answer as soon as we possibly can. And so just as an example of this, one of our highest performing sales pages, this immediately is speaking to the brain's desire to move away from pain and towards pleasure. All right. So the subheadline is proving the headline by saying what it is, what they want, and how long it's going to take. Then the third section of this is really just explaining who I am and why they should listen. All right, so these all work really nicely in the form of links in a chain. Now, the third trigger is the law of reciprocity. And so the key here in the law of reciprocity is to give an enormous amount of value before you actually ask for the sale. And so some of the best advice I was ever given, all right, was to try and provide so much value. Literally, if I was selling like a $1,000 per month thing, I would want to give that person $10,000 worth of value before I ever asked for that sale. because when I would go to ask for the sale, that person would already feel like they owed me. There's this really interesting study that was done by the Journal of Applied Social Psychology, which was sweetening the till, which I find really, really interesting. So, you know those experiences where you go to a restaurant and you go to pay the bill, and the waiter will bring over the receipt, but they'll also give you like a box of chocolates, right? But what this study ultimately found was that one candy per person with the bill resulted in a 3.3 increase in tips. 2 candies per person, 14.1% increase. And actually one candy, and then the waiter comes back with more, a personalized gesture, resulted in a 23% increase in the amount of tips that waiter ultimately received. All right, so that's a huge amount of proof that even in the copy that you're writing, the content you're producing, your sales pages, when people are reading it, they should be feeling like you are giving. They should be feeling like they are learning through the copy that you're actually doing. And I'll be showing you an example at the end of this, which shows you how they get that sense of, okay, wow, I've actually come away with a lot of information here. And it was all incredibly helpful to me. All right, so that's building trust through the law of reciprocity. Trigger 4 is scarcity plus pain amplification. Now, if you understand that in your marketing, the best way to ultimately get attention from people, which is the purpose of top of funnel marketing in the first place, is understanding that people are going to respond to anything that triggers those 3 concerns of the brain: safety and survival, conserve energy, move away from pain. All right? And so the content and the marketing and the sales copy that you ultimately write needs to speak to those pains. And I'm not saying that you need to make someone feel like a piece of crap or any of that stuff. But it's more about understanding that you can engineer a sense of scarcity and pain amplification into your copy if it is done correctly with taste. And so one of the most powerful techniques that I learned around this was the idea of loss aversion. Now, if you win $10, right? It's like, oh, that's nice. Like, that's a cool feeling. You know, happy days. I can go buy a coffee with that. But if you lose that $10, like you drop it down the drain or someone steals it from you, that feeling of loss is way more painful than the feeling of gain. And so it is said that people are twice as likely to be motivated by moving out of pain than they are towards pleasure. And so technically speaking, if you can move your marketing to move towards more pain-based loss aversion type, you should be getting twice as many leads and twice as many sales through the door. All right, and so loss aversion basically speaks to the fact that losing hurts 2 to 3 times more than winning actually feels good. And so in the book Influence by Cialdini, he talks about scarcity and perceived rarity actually skyrocketing the value of what you're offering. And when you combine these 2 elements, it is one of the most potent and powerful conversion cocktails in psychology, right? And so we need to make sure that the copy that you're ultimately writing is tapping into this, all right? Because that's where you create supercharged copy, and also you can direct AI to do it in a far better way. Now, trigger number 5 is the identity shift. After this, we'll be getting straight into the copywriting process that you can take. But essentially, the identity shift is speaking to the fact that the brain protects identity above all else. And so social engineers, people, market manipulators, advertisers understand this deeply. All right, because identity is tribe and tribe is survival. We were in a tribe and we got exiled from that tribe. That meant certain death. All right, so you think about it right now. If you're in a friend group and that friend group rejects you, it is painful. It hurts. It even hurts for me, right? If someone doesn't reply to me, it hurts because you get that sense of, oh my God, am I being rejected from the tribe? Am I being rejected from the group? All right, and so great copy ultimately paints 2 pictures. It paints the picture of who you are now versus who you want to become. And the best brands do this incredibly well. This is something that we speak about a lot in our neuromarketing course, is the fact that before and after marketing is the fastest way to ultimately show contrast between someone's before and after state. So if someone is wanting to lose weight, if someone feels fat and their identity is that person, but they want to become this person in the future, if you think about this as point A and point B, state of dissatisfaction between their dream state, the before and after is one of the best forms of marketing you can possibly imagine, because instantaneously in milliseconds, people immediately go, okay, I get it. Like, I want that transformation, right? And that happens with, sort of beauty. It happens with fitness. It happens when it comes to teeth whitening. You want to go from yellow teeth to white teeth, or you want to get some more hair. Why do you think I wear a beanie? All right, so it's all about showing contrast, and this is like one of the most powerful forms that you can ultimately use. All right, so great copy does speak to contrast. It speaks to the identity of the person now and who they ultimately want to become. Because if you can position your service as the fastest, most secure way of ultimately getting there, you're going to be doing so much better. You're going to get so many better results in your copy, your content, and whatever you're putting out there when you can tap into this. All right. And so, my friend, 99% of people prompt AI like a vending machine. And I see it. It's the lazy way of doing it. And when you really need to get to a point where you're prompting it like a psychologist, because psychology and understanding how the brain works is the key to actual marketing. And I've said this before, I say it again, is that when AI completely democratizes the ability to create sales pages, content, everything, there's going to be so many, different competitors out there. So many people saying the same thing, all using, the 3 same models anyway. So it's all going to look and sound the same. If you can bring this neuromarketing, the psychology behind how copy and how content ultimately converts, you're going to be doing so much better. All right. And so the future belongs to those who can wield AI with neuromarketing skills. And there are 2 groups. Those who understand persuasion and psychology, and those who compete against those people. And guys, trust me, the people who are going to win are the ones who understand persuasion and psychology. All right, guys, so we've just gone over the principles of neuromarketing and the dark psychology of how this stuff actually works. So what I'm going to show you now is the system prompt that we've created using these principles, because guys, look, I'm the first one to admit it. The future of copywriting isn't about just typing things out and trying to do this yourself, but it's about directing and understanding the taste behind what makes copy great. So we've built this incredible system prompt that you can see here now, based on all of these psychological principles. So all you need to do is take the system prompt, use it in whatever AI system you're using. We use Claude for this, which you can set up as a project, which I'm about to show you. But ultimately, you can now take this to create incredibly powerful sales copy for whatever offer, social media post, email that you're basically writing. Okay, so the system prompt that allows us to get these insane results from AI. Now, whatever LLM platform you're using, it doesn't matter. When you load it up with this dark psychology copywriter, you are essentially getting your own elite direct response copywriter trained in persuasion, psychology, social engineering principles, and neuromarketing. So essentially, you're going to be writing copy that converts by triggering deep psychological responses and not just by sounding clever, which is what most AI platforms are essentially doing. And so what I want to do right now, before I show you how to implement the skill, is the same prompt used completely generically into Claude's Sonnet 4.5 model, and then the same prompt using our actual skill. The prompt we're going to be using is write me copy for a full landing page for my $497 online course that teaches freelancers how to land high-ticket clients. My target audience is freelance designers and developers making 3 to 5K per month and want to hit their first 10K. So let's run this. And you can see here, stop trading hours for dollars, start landing 5K to 15K clients on repeat. All right, so it goes into some problem agitation, goes into the solution, what's inside, module, bullet points, features, right? So, like I said earlier, guys, this is what the industry standard is. This is what people are going to be producing on a daily basis. This is what the market is going to be flooded with. Now, what I want to show you is what happens when you use our Claude.md skill based around copywriting. So all you need to do is go to projects, new project, AI Copywriter. I'm going to go ahead and create the project. So inside instructions, I'm going to go and just paste everything from the system prompt. I'm just going to pop it there. Okay, so there's a huge amount there. We've got quality self-checking, etc., etc. Save that. And I'm going to take the exact same prompt that we just gave Claude, same model, and let's see what it comes up with. So you can see here, step 1 headline, how freelance designers and developers are breaking past 10K per month without hustling harder, lowering their rates, or begging on Upwork. So just compare this, stop trading your hours for dollars, compared to this, which is incredibly detailed, it's tangible, you can already see how much more in-depth this ultimately is. Okay, so we've got a deep input into providing the solution. We've got who the person's name is. We've got the story, which ultimately gets them to relate to it. You know, compared to the generic option here, you've got positions yourself as the obvious choice, fills your pipeline with qualified leads. Yes, anyone can say that. But how much more in-depth is this from a benefit standpoint? Then we've got social proof. We've got make your offer, and we've got a beautiful offer stack laid out here as well, which is terrific. I mean, you're just completely overwhelming people with value, and you're giving them and tapping into that law of reciprocity. Okay, so what makes this different from AI slop? So AI default, like in the first example, unlock your potential with a revolutionary course. In this, you're making less per hour than your old job, except now you don't get PTO. AI default, learn proven strategies to grow your income. This is that knot in your stomach when you open the calendar and see it's empty for next week. So it's completely emotional, and it always speaks to the 3 core concerns of the brain: safety and survival, move away from pain, and ultimately to conserve energy. And every single line of this copy is like a link in a chain, beautifully getting the reader to read down all the way to the call to action. And my friend, if you start using this, you're going to be in the 1% of people who are actually writing psychologically powerful and triggering copy for whatever offer you're putting out there. Now, this skill MD that we loaded up into this project will do content, it'll do emails, it'll do whatever you want, but it is loaded with all of the things that you need to ultimately implement the 5 psychological triggers that make the brain make decisions and ultimately say yes. If you want to get access to this claudeskill.md file, you can get it literally for $7 inside of our school community. There's a bunch of other cool resources in there as well. So dive in, my friend, and I will see you on the inside.